I'd be curious to see how it went for you guys. But it sounds like most of the people I talked to, they were taking vacations and trying to keep it pretty quiet.
Right.
But, so hopefully their customers were taking care of you.
Exactly. T. Harris, what's up, brother?
What's up, man?
What's going on? It's good to see you. If you are on watching today, I'd be curious. Did you work on Monday or not? Just kind of curious. Throw it out in the chat. Today we're talking about handling bad news and all of any variation of the bad news that can happen in brokering, trucking, logistics, warehousing. I've heard some crazy warehouse stories. But I think it's an interesting topic to talk about. So I'm excited to chat through the list here.
Yeah, no, I am too. From some of the calls I've overheard from that local brokerage, and then from people calling in, I wrote down a handful of things a broker might have to deliver to a shipper that's maybe tough to deliver, right?
Yeah.
So, I think the most important thing, and I see this on LinkedIn all the time, is being transparent.
Yeah.
Having, communicating, but also trying to provide another way. Instead of just saying, hey, I can't do something, let's try to help someone out, right? You always got to have another way. You got to think logistically. But problem solving is crucial too. So
yeah, I was going to say, I think for even if you have bad news, right?
Yeah.
Providing some sort of solution. I always said here's something I got to tell you about my kids. My kids are these wonderful, 12-year-old kids that they just don't, they're 12. They're trying to learn who they are and what they do. And they bring me more problems. I can't log into Fortnite, or I don't know how my remote gets charged, or, they're just learning the typical things like life. And I'm like, all right, if you bring me a problem, bring me a solution.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so I preach that to my kids all the time. It's like, hey, you got a problem? Give me a solution. Right. Let's find a way, just so their minds start working logistically and solutions based. And we'll get them into brokering at some point.
I love this. Your son actually fixed my mower. That is the start of thinking logistically.
I know. He's
Your
wild.
12-year-old son's fixed my damn mower.
He's wild. He just swapped out. I was talking to him the other day. We were hammering out. We live on it's like a little over 4 acres and not a huge place, but I was mowing. I come back in. I go, hey, buddy, what are you doing? He goes, I just switched out a carburetor. And I'm like,
I love it.
Is anyone else having a 12-year-old talk to you like this? No. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
No, not at all.
I love it. I love it. TR said if they need one flat, Step Deck will assist to back them up. Exactly. Yeah. I'm telling you, there were some brokers that pissed off some shipping managers this weekend because they didn't answer their phone on Monday. Yeah. And they had a truck that went down and they couldn't get a hold of somebody. There's some opportunity. Pick up the phone. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone this week. It's kind of an interesting week. And so if you can grind out some calls, it's worth time.
Yeah. So. In your years of brokering, and like I said, I wrote down all these some scenarios, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to kind of pick your brain on maybe if you had a situation like this, occur, how did you handle it? How the kind of the steps went with you and that customer.
Yeah.
There's quite a bit here, but some of the things I'll just kind of rattle them off here. But failure to cover a load. If a shipper's trying to reach out to you, like this weekend, maybe weren't able to cover a load. Asking for detention. I don't know if anyone knows what detention is, but we'll explain what that is.
Sure.
And how that comes up.
Sure.
Failure to deliver on time.
Yep.
Maybe a carrier fell off.
Yep.
One of my favorites is damage to goods, because it starts to get a little bit weird.
Yeah. And a caveat to that one is not so much damage to goods, but what happens if the receiver or shipper damages your carrier's truck?
Oh, I didn't even think of that one.
Now we get kind of weird.
Write that
That's
one
when
down.
we get weird. We'll talk about that in a second.
Oh, that's a good one. And then maybe with the rates increasing, how do you have that talk? Capacity shortages, and then lost load.
Yeah. I've had all this happen.
Okay.
So we can start at the top.
Let's do it. Failure to cover a load then. Let's talk through that.
You know what? This is something that there is nothing more humbling than not being able to cover load. You get a shipper on the phone. They're willing to trust you, commit to you, and say, hey, I need you to cover this load, and then you can't, right? The biggest thing that I recommend is obviously transparency, try to find them a solution. But the sooner you let them know, you got to think. Something that I always talk to brokers about, dispatchers, even carriers, is that you're not their only solution, right? And so the sooner you tell them, time is everything on this situation.
Right.
The sooner you tell them, hey, I want to give you a heads up. My truck fell off, or hey, I'm not able to cover this. I thought that I could, and it's not working out. Now, here's some weird little caveats and webs that happen from this, right? When I was brokering, we had a no-fail client. Mm-hmm. You don't fail or you get kicked out.
Oh, shit. That's intense.
Well, at the end of the day, guess what? If you can't cover the load, it's because your rate is just a little too tight. Mm-hmm. There's balances of how much do you need in order to cover this load, right? More money you have, the easier it is to cover the load. The tighter it is, you're grinding. Right. You know what I mean? And if it's a weird week, or if the shipper doesn't have friggin' regular receiving hours, he closes at 2, you know who you are.
Quit it.
Yeah. Like, honestly, you want to be a shipper of choice? I don't know. Stay open until 4 o'clock.
It is what it is.
But I tell you what, the quicker you can communicate over, take the humble pie, eat it, get it over to them, let them know your situation. If it's a no-fail situation and you have to cover it, you're going to have to take that loss. Right. You're going to have to buy a truck for more than what you have that load for.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
And so, how many lost leader loads do you have in a month? Hopefully it's minimal, or you're not going to be in business. But those things happen. Right. You still got to provide service. You still got to be able to show up. And so that's an interesting situation. But I think communication in this particular case is way more important on timing. Okay. Don't wait 4 hours. Mm-hmm. Try to cover it in 30 minutes or less. Like, we got to freaky fast sub this thing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. That's a good point there. One thing to add to this, I don't know if Gunner's watching, but Gunner, who is another freight broker, we were chatting the other day, and a situation kind of like this came on. He didn't fail to cover the load, but he was given the shipper options.
Right.
Hey, I can cover it for Friday for this, but I can also do it for Monday for that.
Yeah.
So he was giving them options, which I love.
Yeah.
But he didn't fail anything. He was just kind of giving them solutions.
I think that's half the battle is, hey, I do have these options. People don't know what they actually want sometimes.
Right.
How quick does it really need to move? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. Does it matter? And those are questions that you should be asking as a carrier, as a broker. Yeah. Because time is everything. T. Harris, time is freight is money, right? Honestly, time is everything. If I have more time to cover a load, I'm going to get a more competitive rate. Right. If I have less time, guess what?
Right.
Is what it is.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, thanks for being here. guys.
Yeah, Appreciate what's going on? Tell us how your Monday was, how your crazy Memorial Day weekend is. Hanging in there, got the truck out of the shop, ready to roll. Good.
Heck yeah, Jerome.
I love that. Any inspections yet? I'm interested if he's got any inspections yet.
No, we'll get you one this week. Walk me through detention. I've heard this come up a few times. It's been about 2 weeks ago. I had a broker, ask me how to kind of go about this. And I know you talked with him on the phone, but talk me through detention. What is detention? How does that come up?
Yeah, detention's an interesting situation because, what happens, and it depends on the type of equipment. It kind of depends on, there's a lot of variabilities to detention, but the simpleness is you got to the receiver or to the shipper, okay, and no one unloaded you in a quick manner.
So the carrier's just kind of sitting there.
Right.
Okay.
Now, a lot of larger shippers have this situation well defined. If you get set up with a shipper, usually what they have is an accessorial table, right? An accessorial table will define detention, tarping, it'll define layovers, it'll like anything that potentially could happen, right? But when you're asking for detention, boy, you better have your facts straight.
Right.
Okay. Here's a couple of ideas and thoughts, right? Number one, when your carrier gets to that shipper, whether they do this every time or not, just make it a repeat habit. Check in. Hey, you mind signing my delivery receipt with the time I'm checked in? You're not asking for anything. It's just simple. How did I check in? They sign it and they say $7.59, right? Now, if you sit there, now normal detention is you have 2 hours to unload or 2 hours to load.
Okay.
And after that, then you start getting paid detention, right? Detention can be anywhere from $50 an hour after 2 hours, right? To I've seen $150 an hour. Okay. The difference in variation is different types of equipment, right? If it's a stretch RGN detention versus a van, way different scenario, right? And so it also depends on where detention is at. I had a weird situation. The detention bill ended up being like a little over $8,000. And the reason why, we had a stretch RGN, we had a piece of equipment waiting on a crane. The crane didn't show up. I had pilot cars on both ends. I had to pay the pilot cars. I had to pay the stretch RGN. And I did the same thing. Our driver got to the job site. I had him sign in. They know who that guy is on site, so I can send it to the shipping manager. Shipping manager is like, oh, it's Neil. Here we go.
Yep.
Here's what not to do with detention, okay? Here's when detention, asking for detention, gets very difficult, is when you have nothing documented, right? If the carrier sits there for 4 hours and then finally calls his broker, stop it. If it's at an hour, call your broker. If it's at 2 hours, call him again. Check in and let him know. Every hour is important, right? But if it's not documented, it's going to be harder to get detention because shipping managers just, they want to minimize their costs. Think about it from their shoes. Well, I didn't even know. He could have called and said, hey, why aren't you unloading my car or my truck?
Right.
So detention's an interesting one. I really think it's important to document here. Communicate with either your broker or the shipping manager.
Okay. I like that. Communication's key, man.
It's everything. Yeah, it's everything.
Yeah.
So
interesting. Okay. Let's see. Where do we jump here? You want to jump to? Let's do like a rate increase.
Yeah, this is an interesting one, man. Rate increases are, I used to work for this LTL company called Nebraska Transport. Shout out to the cats of 73, right? This wonderful company. And what they would do every year, this was wild. LTL was wild. And if you watch LTL companies, they all do this. They just announce, hey, just so you know, general rate increase, GRI is what they called it.
Okay.
General rate increase of, and it was anywhere from, I saw it to 2.5% to 9%, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a general rate increase. Hey, we're taking rate increases. Take it or leave it. Now, the contract guys didn't change, right? But general pricing, they changed, right? What I thought was really interesting about asking for a rate increase is the shipping managers always pushed back and wanted you to explain to them why you deserved to be paid more. Mm-hmm. Okay. You know what I mean? So when it's time to get a rate increase, number one, don't wait multiple years, right? Because what happens if you don't take a 3 this year or 4% increase this year and you skip next year, well, then year 3, you're going to have to take a 12% to catch up, and that hurts even more. Right. It would have been better to take a 3, a 3, and a 3, go from there, right? Okay. So I always recommend when your costs get higher, start to understand them, document them. Mm-hmm. Well, my carriers are saying fuel's going up, or my carriers are saying insurance is going up, or my carriers are saying, hey, the cost of equipment went through the roof this month, right? There's a lot of factors that can contribute to costs, right? And so it could be just an operating thing, right, as well, right? So anytime you talk to your shipper that you're under contract with, mm-hmm. Don't hesitate to have those conversations. They're hard conversations to have. At least just let shipping managers know, hey, I just got a bump on my insurance. I need to replace some tires. Those tires are going up a little bit. People understand. Right. People do understand. Now, you can't just go and friggin' try to get your truck payment in one shot.
Right.
But hey, increase here, increase there. Inflation's a real thing. You know what I mean? However, rates have been so bad Not a lot of people are having these conversations
Right.
right now. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think what's kind of overlooked, because you keep mentioning like document things, right? Have things to fall back on to prove your, or to just kind of back up what you're trying to say,
Yeah.
right? You know, hey, my cost went up. Here's
Yep.
where it went up. Here's why. You know, I think that's where you need to have maybe those. I don't know. What would you think? Quarterly meetings with these shippers.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what worked for you?
I think getting with your shipping manager a couple times a year,
Okay.
you know, is really important. That's probably that's probably the lowest amount of times, a couple times a year. If you can get to them 3 times, they're busy, you're busy.
Exactly.
Then it's neither here nor there.
Right.
I have seen some shipping managers that do like a quarterly,
Okay.
Or like reports on, you know, what's your on time, you know, what's your on time delivery, what's your on time pickup, right? Do we have any claims, things like that? So,
that's good to know.
yeah. So, mitigating disputes, insurance broker will most likely insurance carrier should proceed. Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, T. Harris kind of hit it on the head here. You know what I mean? Like, you know, tension's negotiable. Disputes, insurance, communication early when changes. Yeah, exactly.
You get them in.
And I think just taking that little bit of courage, boy, people. I remember sitting in when I was with Nebraska Transport. We would sit in these meetings and talk about, all right, what's the rate increase? You know, how do we communicate it, right? And then we would kind of almost second guess ourselves a little bit.
Right.
We'd be like, is that too high? Too low? Is everyone else doing it? What is everyone else doing?
Yeah.
And you'd watch like UPS and FedEx kind of announce it first.
Mm-hmm.
They're the big dogs,
right?
And then you'd get like Old D and Estes, and it was wild. And then all these regional guys would be like, "Wow, UPS did it," and then they all just start like, it's kind of funny. So it kind of funnels in.
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those things. So general rate increases. Although they're tough conversations, if you take just little bites at a time, it's way better than trying to bite off a 15% rate increase. So,
okay. Noted. I love that. Talk to me through about when you lost a load. I remember you telling me about this story one time, but I don't know if it was you lost a load, the carrier kind of went on and did his own thing, but it all essentially, I mean, it comes back to you in a way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Tell me how you dealt with a lost load, or maybe a load didn't get there.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
So we're in the basement of a law office.
Yeah.
This was wild, man. And actually, no, we were up on the hill, and we were moving, you know, like Kubotas around. I don't think it was for Kubota, but it was like kind of those all-wheel drive UTVs, you know, thing, side by sides. There's a better word for it. And it was like this crazy multi-stop thing. And for whatever reason, we did have tracking on this truck. But you can turn those things off and on. And this was like 10 years ago, right? And many forget drivers lose money, hours of time, and also the company does. Yeah, they do, honestly. They really do. So he's on this multi-stop load. It has to get to Sacramento. And he's going through Reno. We had no idea this driver was like a former gambling addict, and he fell off the wagon with our load. He dropped the load at like a truck stop, drove his truck over to the local casino, and went on a 12-hour bender. So it was wild. So we had tracking on the trailer, so we could see where his trailer was at.
Yeah.
But we couldn't see where his truck was at. We just knew his trailer was there. In fact, here's the desperation voice that goes through as a broker's mind, right? So we call this guy, can't get a hold of him. All right, maybe he's sleeping, maybe he's getting fuel, maybe he's showering. Not a big deal. We can see where the truck's at. It's in Reno. No answer. 4 hours later, we're kind of going, all right, now it's kind of getting weird. What do we do? So we send an email, we send phone calls, we send texts. Then we get on the FMCSA, find out who the owner is. We call the owner. He did answer. He's like, well, let me look. So he had some kind of tracking thing on his equipment, right? All of a sudden, the owner went rogue. We couldn't get a hold of this guy. So then we're calling people at the gas station going, hey, is there a truck in your friggin' yard out there?
Mhm.
I don't know. We're a big truck stop. All right. Well, can we pay you to do this? No, we're busy. Okay. So we hired an Uber. Literally, I got on my phone. I hired an Uber for that location. And
No way.
and he called and he goes, what do you want me to do? I go, I want you to drive around until you find this truck number. Because we knew the truck number.
Right.
Sure as hell. I think it was an $18 Uber. We didn't get black, of course.
Yeah.
We just got the regular Uber service.
Right.
And he was like, you want me to do what? And I'm like, just close the load. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So we hired an Uber. It's $18. And he finds the trailer. 24 hours later, man, like all of a sudden we finally get this guy. We find out that he went on a bender, lost control of his gambling addiction. The owner ended up calling us back the next morning. He sent one of his other drivers up, picked up the load and took it, right? Now that's sort of best case scenario.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you get a load stolen, here we go. When you get a load stolen, full on friggin' stolen, boy, everything comes down to documentation, vetting. How did you vet that guy? Did you get a carrier packet? Did you get the COI? Did you double check the insurance? Right? Because there's going to be a claim, right? There's going to be a claim for sure. And man, when you lose a load, you got to be having tracking on, but there's some crazy issues with tracking. And so there's a lot going on with lost loads. Communicate to your insurance company. They're obviously there for a reason, partnering with you, letting the shipping manager know right away. There's some things in here that can happen. And boy, there's a humble pie you just don't want to take.
Right.
Whew, it hurts.
How did the talk go with the shipping manager though?
Well, he usually asks, or he or she. I've heard from a couple different people on how the communication went on both sides. They're usually going there. Most of the time, I got to give it up for shipping managers. Majority of the time, they're fairly calm.
Right.
Most of the time, there's some situations that happen.
I can see that.
But they usually say, okay, well, have you contacted insurance? Have you contacted the police?
Mm-hmm.
What do you need from me? Do you have any camera footage? Did you check them in? What was the process there?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And this is why I think it's really important when you're sending trucks into shippers. Hey, truck number, trailer number, the name of the company. Boy, that gives that transparency, gives that shipping manager maybe not only a little bit of confidence, but at least he'll know, hey, I should be checking for these two things.
Right.
Then in some particular cases, that shipping manager can mitigate loss. Mm-hmm. Hey, this truck number and trailer number didn't show up. Mm-hmm. Is that correct? You can hopefully mitigate some loss. Right. So lost loads, the police are involved, state patrol's involved, especially depending on the value of it. Your insurance is involved, and document everything. No longer make phone calls. Everything needs to go through email, so you have all these phone calls. Right. So it's not a he said, she said. Mm-hmm. You can pick up the phone and talk, but go, hey, I appreciated the conversation. I'm going to just follow back up with an email about this conversation.
That's smart. Yeah.
Because everything's got to be documented.
Yeah.
Holy buckets. This is miserable. Your stomach is a hot potato. The police, it's not fun. It's not entertaining. Yeah. Hell, I remember one load that we lost. Justin, if you're watching, shout out to this cat. He
what's up, Josh?
Josh, what's going on, brother? Justin actually got to a point where he was like messaging him on like Facebook, and like it was out of control. So any type of way of connecting with people, you'll find a way. Yeah, I believe you. When you get backed in a corner and you don't know where your $180,000 load is, hold on.
Talk about not being able to sleep at
night.
Holy shit.
I always do recommend too. I mean, you really need to know how much a load is worth.
Okay.
And I think it's a question that a lot of people don't ask. Well, how much is this thing worth? Right. You know what I mean? Put air tags to a point of destination. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you have to. I've seen some weird fraudulent activity around air tag concepts that are kind of wild. Mm-hmm. But it definitely, it keeps it simple. Yeah. Macro point just tracks the driver's cell phone, right? So,
boy, my friends hate my ear tags because if you're an iPhone user, it tells you, hey, there's an air tag following you. And I always have an air tag on me, so then my friends always get notified, and they're like, take that damn thing out of your pocket.
That's so good.
I mean, I see why it's important, because if someone's like stalking you or
Yeah,
something, I'm not a stalker, but it's just kind of funny.
Yeah,
Sometimes
never
air tags are needed.
Never know.
Yeah.
Never know.
I love it though. Let's talk about capacity shortages.
Mm.
I feel like I've when you're talking with a customer or shipper, you always want to say, oh, I always got capacity, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure that you could cover that, but
Yeah.
there's going to be times where maybe capacity is not there. So how do you work through that? What's that look like on a broker end?
When there's capacity shortages, there's a lot of ways to handle finding a truck, right?
Carrier check.
Yeah. So, and what a majority does, right? What the masses do is they get on data and truck stop. Look how big they've gotten, right? They get on 1, 2, 3, and they post up their loads and they just sit and pray. What happens if you don't get a call though? And that's coming. That future is here. It's coming soon, right? Coming to a theater near you. I recommend if you get a shipper in an area that's fairly permanent. I'm picking up out of Fargo, North Dakota every week, right? I'm picking up out of Portage, Wisconsin every week. Yeah, the load boards may work for a bit, okay? But if you're not spending 30 minutes a week on relationships in the local areas, if you're consistent shippers, if it's all over the place, I get it. There's always patterns, right? But if it's in one specific location, you should have relationships with the top 15 van guys in St. Louis, or top 15 RGN guys or flatbed guys right there. So you can pick up the phone and say, hey, you have capacity on this? Because capacity shortage is coming, and e-carrier check is kind of the king about this. DIY, what's up, brother? What's going on, man?
What's up, man?
So I recommend every week, not only are you doing, cold calls and you're finding shippers and you're working that process, the same goes for carriers. You're calling carriers in areas where you're prospecting so that you can sound more local, so you can sound more intelligent and confident when you're making those calls.
Yep.
Call 5 carriers, have some combos, then make some calls in the shipper area right there. Why not? It's going to give you confidence. You're going to hear some of the local feel, the tribal knowledge that they have, and it'll also help you with the capacity shortage. It's coming. I don't know when, but it's coming. And we continue to see the numbers fall off. Right. You know what I mean? Every week. Carrier check posts it right on their dashboard. It's minus every month, every week. So capacity shortage, it's coming. Take 30 minutes every day to change what potentially could be a really bad. If you're posting a load 100% of the time and failing it every time, get that number down to 85%. Get that number down to 60%. And that's by picking up the phone and talking to carriers.
Right. And that falls into when a carrier falls off, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So that kind of goes hand in hand together.
Yeah. DIY in the house. He was on last weekend. I can't get enough of this guy. Yeah. I find him interesting. I really do. Adam, what's up, brother?
Go subscribe to his channel.
Yeah, he's very entertaining.
We don't really need to cover the carrier fell off because, like you said, let's start calling carriers.
Yeah.
30 minutes a day. Call carriers in that area. I like that. What about damaged goods? How do we deal with that? Boy,
claims are crazy. Let's talk through it in a couple different ways.
Okay.
So let's talk about. I don't know if Tire Killer's on or not, but here's an interesting situation. Okay, Tire Killer goes to Arkansas, and he goes and gets some coils, and they hit his truck with the forklift, or they load a friggin' coil and it puts a hole in his trailer, right? Obviously, the shipper is responsible for this. However, if Tire Killer's getting that load from a broker, okay, this needs to be looked at, inspected, and kind of at least dealt with ASAP, right? He needs to go take some pics, send them to his broker. Broker sends them to the shipper and say, hey, I just got word from the carrier. I wanted to give you a heads up. This is what just happened. Now, here's some of the process, right? He's going to have to go deliver that load. If he didn't damage his trailer bad enough, if it's just scarring, right, or if it's minimal, He's going to go deliver that load, probably go to a shop. Shop's going to tell him, hey, it's going to be $700 to fix this. Here's what we're going to do. Now he needs to know, do I send this to the shipper? Do I send this to the broker?
Mm-hmm.
Who's paying for this for my truck?
Yeah.
Are you adding it onto my load, right? Or how is this process working? Now, as a broker, you need to find that solution fairly quickly and not avoid the situation.
Right.
Boy, when you bury your head like an ostrich, that's when everybody gets pissed off.
Right.
Or if you wait, if he comes back and says, well, this happened 3 weeks ago, good luck, right?
Yeah.
So in that particular case, communicate, get to the shipper. Shippers know things happen. It's not their first rodeo, right? So here, let's flip the card, right? The shipper was at fault just a moment ago. If you have a carrier that backs into a friggin' stop sign at the shipper, we got some issues, right? As a carrier, do you fire customers that tell you they want consistent rates, but then go to the broker when they go quote it cheaper? These are loads from a good area to an inconsistent area. Man, I love that question. Let me get into that in a second. Let's finish up the thing. I'll get into that in a second.
Okay.
If you, as a carrier, and we all make mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes cost you money. This is why you have insurance. But at the same time, you just backed into a sign. You just backed into their building. I've seen that. This is the wildest thing. I've actually seen a friggin' truck just right into the side of a building. Things happen, right? It's not fun. But hopefully the carrier will take responsibility. Then he needs to communicate to the broker, or he needs to communicate to the shipper. Walk in and say, hey, I just friggin' did this. I am sorry. I've seen you lose accounts over that situation.
Yeah.
What do you do? Right? Things happen.
Mm-hmm.
That gets a little wild. Now, if it gets damaged in transport, kind of like LTL does, mm-hmm. where loads can shift, or the carrier hit a cross dock and that didn't work out. Mm-hmm. There's some weird stuff. Cranes, get a crane involved. He doesn't actually use a T-bar and it doesn't get picked up evenly. And all of a sudden you got one end dangling. I've done that with a Tonka truck with my boy, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's at fault and insurance needs to know fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. However, the holdup usually is, well, how much does it cost to fix it? Right? And the shipper always wants to say, well, I need a brand new one. Well, do you? Or is there a way to just replace that part, right, or that piece or whatever it may be, right? We understand shippers have a level that they need in order to mm-hmm. get it out to their clients, right? They want new clients, right? If it's a used piece, used and new is a whole nother thing. We could have a whole show on friggin' claims. Over communicate, manage it that way, and hopefully with over communicating, you don't get a bunch of this. Well, it's his fault, her fault. It's everyone's finger pointing when it's mm-hmm. an issue.
Right.
So, and then the broker's usually the one caught holding the bag. Mm-hmm. So you gotta have to watch. You got to watch a lot of communication. Away we go.
Right. I think what it comes down to, and everything that you kind of been talking about, is communication, documenting.
Yeah.
Kind of dotting your, crossing your T's, dotting your I's, kind of thing. So, it's important to do all that.
Yeah.
So,
so he mentioned cheap freight hauler, right? As a carrier, do you fire customers that tell you they want consistent rates, but then go with a broker when they quote it cheaper? These loads are going from a good area to an inconsistent area. Man, I tell you what, here's my thoughts on this situation is you need to make sure that it's good for you and for the shipper. And if the shipper is actually essentially selling you out to get a cheaper rate, you understand where that relationship's at, right? And if it's not much cheaper, I always tell my kids, like, have you ever gotten in a situation where gas on this side of the road is $4.05, mm-hmm. but gas on that side is $3.97?
Yep.
And I'm like, well, here's the thing, kids. I got to get off this road. I got to go all the way around, and I'm going to save 6 cents on 20 gallons of gas. Mm-hmm. So then we play a mathematical game, right?
Yep.
So a couple things I recommend cheap freight hauler, which I love that you call yourself that, is work on bettering that relationship so that you can continually be considered a value added partner,
Mhm.
right? I think that's huge. But this is going to happen with those shippers that go out to the market all the time and play that game. Because guess what probably happened 3 or 4 years ago, right? Through, the big C, right? Is shippers just got boom, right? And that same animosity right now with carriers and shippers is about to happen. Carriers are going out of business left and right. They're not getting the rates they want. They think the brokers are terrible. They think the shippers are terrible, right? There's a weird game about to happen, and carriers are going to just take it to shippers. I mean, woo, it's going to get weird. So, in my opinion, as a carrier, do you fire a customer? I wouldn't fire him right away or her, but I would try to become a value-added partner where he doesn't see that the extra 10 cents or 15 cents that you charge per mile to go to a friggin' inconsistent area, he understands the value. When you tell him, hey, I'm going to take this load from Minneapolis up to friggin' Bismarck, but I got to deadhead over to Fargo to get a load, he may understand your rate a little more, right? Mm-hmm. And you're not just a transaction, you're actually a value-added partner, right? So try to take up that relationship one level. If it doesn't work, find another shipper. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not every shipper is the right one. Mm-hmm. You got to turn over stones until you turn over stones until you find the right guy, right. Or at least understands the value that you're offering, mm-hmm. with the equipment that you have, with the service that you offer. I know it's tough. I get it. I totally get it. I've seen you lose a load for a penny. That's ridiculous. Add more value. Mm-hmm. Add more value. The transactional clients, yeah, you can make a buck, but find somebody that actually cares about what you do.
Right. That's well said, man. Yeah. No, I can't thank you enough. You literally had some sort of experience with everything we talked about today. Yeah. So, I think it's huge for people that are watching because some of the things will come up. There's absolutely. No doubt about it.
Guaranteed.
So I hope that people watching today learned a little bit today.
Yeah.
And understand that, hey, these situations may come up and here's how I can deal with them.
Yeah.
But that's the most important thing. Sometimes we have to have those hard conversations. You know that as a father.
You don't have a choice.
So, Jared, I can't thank you enough,
yep.
man. I appreciate it. Everyone watching today, thank you so much for being here. Yeah, Tierra. Yeah, he's the man, dude.
I lost my first one last week over a dime.
Oh, gosh.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Josh, this happens, man. I'm telling you that it's wild west in the trucking world. And you fight so hard to get a shipper. You know what I mean? And then you see that and you're like, come on. It's like, really? This is the second time today someone has said the market is turning. Yeah. I don't know if it's fully turning, but you lose enough carriers. You lose enough carriers. Eventually it's going to, you saw, I think FreightWaves or somebody posted out that, Blitz Week, the rates went up about 11 cents on the spot market per mile. They've maintained, I believe, kind of into these last 2 weeks. And summer always rates go up, right? The rates kind of stay up here until we start to cool off, right? October. Right. So it's one of those things. It's definitely, we should see something start to trend, and it may be later, closer to the election. I don't know. Yeah. I wish I had a crystal ball. Some days I think we're the crystal ball, and people are just rubbing us the right way.
Right. Maybe I need to buy a couple trailers sooner rather than later.
That's an interesting scenario too. A lot of people through kind of that weird issue with the big C, right? They bought used equipment maybe at the wrong price and their payments were too high. They were buying them at a higher price, maybe lower interest rates. Well, now the problem is that you can probably find, obviously, equipment. There's a lot of carriers out there. Right. But the rates of interest are so high that are we getting back into that same situation, right? Time will tell, right? But if you got some cash, probably not a bad idea to get some trailers or trucks. Just watch those interest rates and make sure you're aware of how does that payment affect my costs, because a lot of people aren't taking that into consideration. Right.
Yeah, I like that.
And if you can get a friggin' driver, that is another story. We could have a whole show on that.
Right. Hey, T. Harris, I appreciate that, man. Thanks for being here again.
Yeah.
Chief Rayholler, thanks for being here. Josh, you take care of yourself, man. I'm sure that did take it out of you that day.
Yeah.
Take care of yourself, brother.
Yep, absolutely. Go for a walk.
Yep.
Read a book. Sit in the sauna.
Yep.
Do anything. Get back up and go do it again tomorrow.
Yeah.
So.
Man, this industry is tough, man. It is tough.
Yeah.
It is tough. Well, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to check out. You got something to say?
Yeah. We got shirts from Chris White.
We do.
Chris White, the cat, was on our show about a month ago.
First Star
Logistics. I got a shout out. These shirts are wonderful.
They fit nice.
They fit perfectly. So thanks for the shout out.
Yeah.
I got a shout out First Star Logistics.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Chris White, he's friggin' incredible.
Yep.
I can't believe we got free shirts. I love free stuff.
I love it.
I used to ask for a hat everywhere I went. I had, oh my gosh, incredible hat collection.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always give them to my dad, though. So my dad has a better hat collection.
That's fair.
Either way.
That's fair.
Just throwing it out.
Yeah, thanks for thinking of us, Chris. Appreciate you, brother. You guys check out ecarrytruck.com. Come build some relationships. Find your next shipper. Vet your carriers there. Source your carriers. Do it all.
Best platform in the entire world.
It really is, man. Thanks, guys, for watching. We'll see you later.